This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agner.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agner. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Dave Schneider. He's the, not co-founder, he's the founder and CEO of Shortlist.io. I did meet your wife today. Does she count as a co-founder or is it just you?
No, but my co-founder does count as a co-founder.
Okay, so you are a co-founder. All right, so we have a co-founder somewhere. Dave, what's up, man? How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Jay.
Well, we had the pleasure of meeting in person briefly the other day. We both had a booth at the expo, and it's weird because you don't really spend a lot of time with the people you know at those things because you feel like you're like trying to just be in booth mode. So I'm glad we get to spend a couple minutes today. We did get to meet through Philly Tech Entrepreneurs Group, which is another thing you got going on, which as if you don't have enough. So let's start from the beginning though, man. Where did you grow up and did that have any impact on you being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I grew up in Ashland, Massachusetts. It's like 40 minutes west of Boston. Small town, 15,000 people, like 160 kids in my grade. So, relatively kind of like suburban experience. I don't know if it had an impact on me being an entrepreneur. It was basically to not be an entrepreneur because that was just not, I was not around entrepreneurs as a kid. My parents were not entrepreneurial. There's like, my dad was a teacher, my mom's a nurse. And basically, that was not like a career path that people thought of. And just in general, the advice that I got was like study hard, work hard, like go to good college. So I wasn't really like particularly entrepreneurial at a young age.
Did you say your dad was a teacher? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
I hear it's so fun. I hear that so often. It's like such a weird connection to entrepreneurs. And I don't know if it means anything or if it's just an happenstance, but I hear a lot of entrepreneurs have teachers for parents. So, maybe there's a thread there. So talk
Maybe.
about business, man. When you came out of the small town or the suburban life, I mean, just looking at your LinkedIn, like you founded or co-founded like 100 different businesses. You jumped into it and started revving through things. What was the first one you actually started?
So the first one, I guess you could say I started, it wouldn't even be on my LinkedIn, but basically after kind of getting out of the small town, then I went to uni, then I graduated, I got a corporate job. I worked out for about 2 years. Eventually I quit. I went digital nomading with my wife. And the goal was travel around the world for as long as we can, kind of save up money, that type of thing. And we started a travel blog. We started making money through SEO, and we learned that a lot of the ways that travel bloggers were making money was through introductions to like agencies and just kind of building like this network, which was something that you built over time as a travel blogger, but many other bloggers wanted to make money but didn't have that network. So started this service of like introducing other travel bloggers to our network in exchange for a commission on whatever they earned from the relationship. So basically we kind of solicit travel bloggers, be like, hey, do you want to make some money on your blog? They all did because that was the point of why they even had it. No one knew how to do it. So we'd kind of introduce them, make the rounds to these different connections that we had. And then if like an exchange happened, like say $200 or something like that for a guest post on the travel blogger's website, we would take like 10 or 20%, something like that. And we just kind of, rinsed and repeated that. And it kind of became this like client service business that we ran that was, like reasonably successful at the time for us.
Um, are blogs dead these days? I mean, other than just for SEO, like, is it still super active? Like, I'm not a blogger or even I should be doing it for my own site for SEO reasons, but I'm not. Because like there was the big peak where like everybody was doing it. It was like a thing. It was the hot new thing. Who's like, is it mainly for what it's always been for, kind of, content generation for people and, people consuming it like normal?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, blogs are kind of like the first sort of medium to a degree of like how content could be created and consumed, right? Written. And now we have podcasts and now we have videos on YouTube and TikTok. And there's so many more ways to kind of produce and consume content. So I wouldn't say blogs are dead, but they have sort of like competition. And so it's really just about understanding whether or not like your audience sort of like learns through blogging and whether that's going to be a benefit to them or not. So that's kind of one of those things where there's sort of like this old outdated advice, like everyone should start a blog, everyone should have one, etc. And that's just not true, but it doesn't, but at the same time, it's definitely not dead. It can be a very useful tool.
Got it. All right, so you traveled around the world and you did a lot of fun stuff. Did you eventually buckle down into, living somewhere and kind of growing roots somewhere?
Yeah, but it took about 5 years or so. The trip was originally supposed to be like 1 year, kind of two. It was going to be kind of like a sabbatical. I was going to come back, maybe go to business school and just sort of transition back in the workforce. But then as we started to run some businesses kind of while we were traveling, I started a software business. We had the travel blog thing going, a couple other little things here and there. We kind of realized that we could just kind of keep this going like indefinitely, on top of the fact that it just is very cheap in many parts of the world, especially when you don't have like a mortgage and kids, which we didn't at the time. But you could travel around Asia, parts of Europe for like not a lot. So we just kept going. We were kind of just living our 20s. And then eventually, after about 5 years, as I really started to get more rooted in entrepreneurship and we started to think about wanting a community, starting to want to raise a family, maybe buy some property, we started to think about where to settle down, and eventually we ended up in Philly. Being from Boston, it was relatively close to home, but we also knew a couple people, like from my wife's college friends. We said, let's give it a shot. We'll rent an apartment for like a year and a half, and if we like it, we'll buy some property. If not, hop around. We liked
Hmm.
it, we bought property. Here we are.
Wow. Do you think you could run the business? I mean, kids withstanding, I think that's a whole separate conversation. But do you feel like if you're abroad now, later in life, that you could run the business as efficiently as you do from just having a home base and having an office, office as we all kind of do? Is it the same? Because I struggle to do that even now when I'm on vacation or whenever I say I'm going to work and I sit down to do it, I'm like, this just is not, I'm not in my zone. Do you feel like you could do that again if you had to?
No, yeah, it's not really possible. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't successfully run and grow businesses while traveling. Ninja Outreach, which was a software business that, I kind of bootstrapped, eventually exited after 4 years. Like I did 90% of that essentially like kind of on the road and stuff and just kind of delegating, working with the team and things like that. Like it definitely can be done, but there wasn't a day when I didn't feel like it was some weird, uncomfortable trade-off between, do I work today? Do I explore the city that I'm in for 3 days and we're going somewhere else? And this is the whole point of me traveling, about kind of getting out and experiencing
Hmm.
new places. And in a lot of ways, I always just kind of felt like I was doing a poor job at both of those things. I wasn't being a great business owner or CEO, that I wasn't being a great like traveler and kind of hadn't really properly set aside time. So that was one of the things that, after a few years, we kind of just said like, it wasn't that we couldn't have just kept doing what we were doing, but I just felt like I was sort of stuck within the limits of what the lifestyle afforded in terms of like the working aspect. And that was one of the main reasons why we decided to come back to the States.
Yeah, I mean, you always see the totally real and not fake at all, LinkedIn and Instagram posts of people like working around the world and
On the
like they're on the
beach. Yeah.
beach. I'm like, I have trouble doing it, man. Like I can't mix the two. I either want to kind of be in or be out. And like it's always been kind of tough for me to do both.
Yeah, it's not that comfortable. There's always like a ton of glare on your screen, like
Yeah,
sand's getting in the keyboard, and you're just like, oh,
right.
this isn't at all like what it looks like.
I hate having even like one meeting at like 4 o'clock during the day. I feel like I just subconsciously like everything is based around that during the day. And I feel like I can't really
Disconnect.
disconnect and enjoy myself and whatever. So anyway, all right. So you move back. Let's fast forward. Where, or maybe there's something in between you want to talk about, but let's get the fast. I was going to say fast forward. Let's get to shortlist.io. Where did that come from?
So after running this Ninja Outreach for 4 years or so, and eventually exiting it, I was kind of doing a bit of consulting, just just kind of see where the wind takes me, type of thing. And I knew that I wanted to get back into products. I wanted to launch more software businesses, but I knew number one, a services business would be easier, quicker to start. And then number two, I believed that it would benefit me down the line, that as I wanted to launch more products, I wanted to own the marketing services myself. I didn't want to ever be kind of reliant on somebody else to, determine the strategy and the pricing and the people. Like I wanted to kind of have all those things in house. So the engine. So I started Shortlist primarily in the space of SEO and link building, which was just like a space that I knew very well from travel blogging and everything that we had done with that, with the goal of building up more inbound related services so that later on when I, would launch software businesses, I already kind of had a playbook to kind of go after. And then, naturally, like as an entrepreneur, when you start something, like you always just want it to be independently sustainable and profitable. And so it's okay, yes, this is something I'm sort of building for me and my future projects. But if we get some clients for it and it can become self-sustaining, then whatever is that additional profit is what can be used for growth of my own project. So that's kind of where Shortlist came from. Eventually, relatively early on, like maybe 6 months into it, I did partner with someone else who I thought would be like a good person for the biz dev side of things. Cause I've always been more of like an operations dude, like managing the team and thinking about how to run the service efficiently and stuff like that. I've never been like a going to networking events and stuff like that kind of guy. So it's like, I need one of those to join me. And I partnered with this guy, David, and we've been kind of working on it for the last 6 years or so.
The guy who runs Philly Tech Entrepreneurs networking group is not good at networking or business development. We'll get to that in a second, but I love that that is something you do. It's just like the classic, if you're too comfortable, you're in the wrong place. And it feels like you've kind of lived that a little bit and keep pushing yourself to learn and do new things. Who was your first customer at Shortlist?
First customer for Shortlist was within the network of my partner David, and that was really kind of like one of the main reasons to bring him on. He was kind of a well-connected entrepreneur, would always be going to different masterminds, conferences, events for other entrepreneurs, a lot of people in like the 7-8 figure plus range. And so as he went around, he kind of said, "Hey, I've started this new agency and we've got this kind of angle around how we do link building and other services." And one of the ones he connected us with was just, ecstatic about what we were putting together and wanted to get in. So yeah, and we just kind of brought him on. It was, just really just within the network type of thing.
And what did you guys do when the network effect, because at some point that you cap out at your network, his network, anybody's network, what was the next approach? Were you applying your own playbook from your own company? Like how did you guys start to build, inbound or outbound or whatever you chose to go after?
Yeah, ironically, we went with the outbound, which was, you're right, like eventually kind of the network just becomes something that, you can only scale it so much. Someone can only kind of meet so many people. They can only refer so many people. You reach a certain point in business, you kind of need to generate your own leads through other channels. We decided to do outbound just because it was just something that we thought would be like a quicker kind of A to B in terms of getting
Mhm.
people, and it was sort of better suited for the team. So we did the usual, I used, Ninja Outreach was kind of an email marketing software. So I had background in, setting up, email, mail inboxes and templates and the tracking and getting it all together. So kind of, we just built this out for the team, gave them a little bit of started developing who that ICP was, what is the way we should talk to them, started sending out some emails, generating calls, and yeah, kind of that was really the way that the business got, to that next level.
Mhm. And how has that evolved? Have you continued to, if you talk to 100 business owners, they're each doing 1,000 different things, right? So like, has some of it stopped working and you've just moved into other things? Like, what is your stack today? If you were like doing outbound, is it cold email? Is it, LinkedIn stuff? Is it cold calls? Like, is it some combination? What is your stack today?
Yeah, I just wrote a post on LinkedIn like a week ago or so, and I kind of shared like all the analytics from, not all the analytics, but some of the most important analytics from our outbound, like over the last like 3 years or so, like dating back to 2022. And just here's how many emails we send, here's like what the booking rate was. And you can just see like a massive degradation in that channel, like over the years. We're talking like, we would probably send, maybe we used to maybe send like 20,000 or so emails a year. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like crazy volume. It was, not insignificant, but not like massive
Mhm.
volume. But from that, we'd have a decent booking rate of maybe like, I don't know, 1 to 2% or something. That I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was something that in that range. And now it's like a tenth of that, in terms of like the booking rate. And the weird thing is that over the years, our actual process, I think, has gotten better. We're using all the fancy tools that everyone says you use. We're using Apollo, we're using Clay, we do, email, like deliverability checks, never bounce, whatever it might be. We're using all the things as part of the playbooks. I do a lot of the editing of the email templates myself. We're tracking all the analytics. We're strategizing every week about, who we should get in touch with, what that angle should be. Our website's better. We have more case studies. We have more authority, more reviews, like everything that should result in a successful outbound campaign is way better than it was 2 years ago. And the
Hmm.
results are like 1/5 of what they were. I think that there's a lot of macroeconomic stuff going on, both just in the States and then specifically within outbound as a channel. It's gotten easier than ever for anybody to just launch, campaigns left and right. And to the extent that, people never really liked getting, solicitations in their email inbox to begin with. But I think now they've become so like desensitized to them, it's just harder and harder than it's ever been. So we have, kind of scaled up the channel to kind of balance out a little bit of the degradation in the conversion rate of the channel to try to achieve similar-ish numbers. But a lot of the kind of slow demise of that channel is why I've been doubling down on a lot of like in-person networking stuff, despite
Hmm.
it not really being my forte.
And how's that been? You said it clearly, like that's not normally your thing. How have you gotten over it? Did you just kind of suck it up and go like, well, the numbers aren't as good for email, so now we need to try this other thing, and I'm gonna go try it, and you just went out and did it? I mean, you've started a whole community which is growing, and I see you at expos and all these other things that, somebody maybe introverted or says they don't like to do that stuff maybe wouldn't be at. So what have you done to kind of get out there to do it? How have you pushed yourself past the normal limits of your comfort?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't necessarily think of myself as an introvert, although I'm not like a clear extrovert either. There's like a term ambivert, it's like kind of somebody in the middle, and I usually call myself that. And it wasn't like I was like super opposed to networking or anything like that. It was more just that, I kind of felt my partner sort of like that was his responsibility. And when you have this in your mind of this like, clear delineation of roles, you just kind of, it just doesn't really think about, come your way. But he started to get involved in other businesses and just for various like life reasons as well, was driving less, referrals. And I was just, I need to pick up the slack. Like if anything's if we're gonna kind of amount to anything. So I started to get deeper into the Philly tech kind of community, going to events from other organizations, and then eventually starting my own, which is Philly Tech Entrepreneurs. I like it. It's been great just like from a connecting with people, like mental health, like getting out of the house, having some good conversations. Like it's just been nice to just be more active in the community, supporting the ecosystem, meeting a lot of people. It is tiring, like for me, I find, because I'm not like a natural extrovert, and a lot of events tend to be in the evening because it's like after work for most people. So you'll end up kind of doing like, a relatively full day of work, and then you'll go to this networking event. It kind of extends the day. A lot of those hours overlap with time that would normally be spent with like kids and wife and stuff like that. So you kind of have to balance it where if I'm doing like, I can't really do more than like 2 events a week, and that's already like a fairly busy week. I can't just be like doing stuff every day. People are always like, "Oh, you're going to this event? You're going to this event? You're the organizer, PT. You must be going to everything." And it's like, no, like it's already a big ask just to go to the one or two that I go to each week. But yeah, in general, it's been good. Like from a lot of like different aspects. From a lead generation perspective, I would not say, at least in the amount of time so far that I've been kind of, putting into it, I can't necessarily speak like particularly highly of it. There's a lot of reasons for that. I think, first of all, I'm not like a particularly salesy person. We were
Right.
like talking before the podcast, and we were like, hey, like how, we went to the expo and stuff like that. And like I went there and there was like a dozen or two people I knew who were like, "Oh, you run a marketing agency?" Like, "Oh, I didn't know that," because I never really like talk about it. Number two, the Philly ecosystem. I mean, it's not like on the level of maybe an SF or New York or something like that. Like a lot of people are still kind of early on in the sort of entrepreneurship stage, so they might not be ready for like marketing and growth services at the moment. So it's kind of and this in general, like it actually feels a little weird as a community organizer promoting yourself, like. You never want people to feel like they're just part of a sales funnel. That's not really like the mission's bigger than that, and it's bigger than me and my business. But so it's like trying to find the right approach to, if you see an opportunity, maybe you have a private conversation with someone, you go, "Oh, I noticed you were looking for this, or you just started
Hmm.
this," but I'm not out there like blasting, "Oh, we have this new promo, we're launching this new, this get buy now." We don't do
Right.
that.
Right.
So in short, it's generally been a positive influence in my life, and I'm trying to kind of navigate like how to also make it advantageous from a business perspective at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about the podcast. It's very easy to create something that people will come to or attend or whatever, and then like you realize like you you start without like a clear plan, and you kind of hope it goes in a direction, and then it doesn't, but it's still kind of fine. And you're like, all right, I still enjoy this enough to be doing it. And it's not like leads aren't falling from the sky from the podcast or from where it's different events we do. But I definitely feel, and I think there is that happy medium though, because you do go to some events that are like smaller that have a bit more branding on them, but they're not obnoxious. And there's like a probably a good balance of like ICP targeting and like having the exact right people in the room that are at least aware of what you do. Because when I used to do the podcast, I would have people come back to me months later and go, "I had no idea you did QA." Kind of like you with the market, the event. It's like, so I started, on calls that I want people to know that we do QA, I will say it as part of the intro to the call. So they hear me say it when we start. So it's like, there's just little things you can do along the way. But I love the idea of creating a networking event and maybe be a funnel. Maybe there's ways to be a little bit more targeted, but I love the concept of it. And yeah, somebody said their social battery was drained the other day. And I was like, I'm going to use that every second of my life because I feel the same, 8 or 9 o'clock comes around. I'm like, dude, I gotta be home in bed. Like, I don't want to be out too late. Like, it gets exhausting. But all right, so a couple more questions. What are you doing from a dad, business owner, husband, kind of health perspective to kind of keep yourself tuned up? I mean, we all got to be here as long as possible, especially for kids, and we're going to be able to pick our kids up and run around and stuff. Like, what do you do physically, mentally, whatever it is, to kind of keep yourself tuned up?
Yeah, I built the gym in my basement because I was just like, all right, like I need to just like make this as easy as possible. I'm someone who, relatively speaking, I enjoy working out. I mean, like, we all have our days where I'm just like, all right, not today, it's not going to happen. But in general, like I'm not someone you need to like drag out to work out or activity or anything like that. I like that. Still, though, I just was like, like even just like that 5 to 10 minute walk to the gym or whatever it was, and having to maybe like get dressed up and check in and all this stuff, like I just felt like it was kind of a little bit of a potential barrier on some nights, and especially with the kids and everything. So I was like, all right, I'm going to just build like a gym in my basement. And one of my sort of like, I don't know, obsessions might not be the word, but I love like trying to think about how to be efficient with a small space. I mean, I live in the city. I have a row home. Like, it's not like a massive property or something like that. So it's how do I make a gym that has enough things for me to kind of utilize within the space in this basement, which is already like not that big and has like a big pool table right in the middle of it. So it's like not a ton of room. But I came across like these foldable squat racks that could like fold in and out of the wall. And then, if you get like some adjustable dumbbells and adjustable kettlebell and stuff like that, all of a sudden, like you got something to work with here. So I've been doing that for a while. And then I recently had hired or was working with a company called Barbell Medicine. They do like, it's a virtual program, like personal training program, and they create the program and they follow you along. You send them videos, they give you tips and stuff like that. So that was kind of that's like my main like go-to. That's how I generally feel like, like myself each day. Once a week, I set aside a few hours where like my wife and I play tennis as something that we like to do and used to do a lot of before we had kids. But then just like weren't really finding the time to sort of sync up. So now that they're both a little older and in daycare and stuff, we have this weekly place as well. So I'm big into that. I feel like we eat like relatively healthy. My wife does a lot of like, she's kind of big into like health food and stuff like that. So those are, smoothie every day type thing. So that's where I'm at. I've never been big so far on like meditation or journaling or affirmations and visualizations and stuff like that. I mean, nothing against them. And I'm not saying I've never messed around with them. It just hasn't stuck. It hasn't stuck with
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, whatever works, dude. It doesn't matter. As long as it's whatever. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm the same kind of way with the semi-religious workout kind of thing, but you feel different when you don't. And I'm like agitated and like I feel like I'm not, like I said, you're not yourself when you don't get that in. So I mean, whatever it is, if it's meditation or journaling, working out, as long as you got something. All right, last question, non-business related. If you could do anything on earth and you knew you wouldn't fail, what would it be?
If I could do anything on earth and I knew I wouldn't fail, and it's not a business thing, right?
Now, it can't be business
Yeah.
related. I
Can't be a
used to get
business thing.
like, I would make my business the biggest thing. And that was like
Yeah,
a
right.
cop out
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
So
Yeah. I feel like the things that stand out are, I'd love to maybe like climb Kilimanjaro or something, there's some sort of like physical challenge that I
Yeah.
knew. But I guess again, sort of knowing that you're not going to fail takes a little bit of the
Right.
excitement out of it. Like actually the potential to fail, the potential that it may be like a challenge that you may not succeed at is part of what makes it enticing. But I get where you're going with this. But I would say, it's been on my mind to do some sort of a mountain climb or something like that. We've done like trekking in Nepal and stuff like that, like done the Annapurna trek. So that was like 12,000 feet or whatever, but not,
Mhm.
we're not like, we're not professionals here either. So that's something I would probably like to do. And in a weird way, I don't know, maybe like run for like a political office could be kind of cool. Again,
Okay.
I mean, probably I would hate it and probably I would regret having done it, but there is something that feels, I don't know, like intriguing about like, I don't know, just municipal sort of positions.
I like
Like being able to affect policy.
I think one person has said be president. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably fair. And yeah, it definitely takes a little bit out of it, knowing you're not going to fail. But I mean, I think it would still be kind of fun to do some of the bucket list things if you knew you could do it. All right. If people want to find you, if they want to find Shortlist, how do they do it?
Yeah, I mean, shoot me an email, david@shortlist.io. No one ever does, but that would be the best place to go. I would say I am pretty active on LinkedIn, like read all my inbox messages. I post, weekly or so. So Dave Schneider, kind of CEO of Shortlist. There are other Dave Schneiders there, but definitely I'd respond there. And then obviously, like if you're in the Philly area and you want to come up to like a Philly Tech Entrepreneurs event, we host events every month, like happy hours, panels, stuff like that. We've literally got an event tomorrow. So I would say tomorrow is in June 11th. This will probably not be published by then. But anyway, yeah, like I'm out at all the events.
All right. And you have a podcast too, right? Don't or for the is it for your company or is it for the group?
It's for the group. Yeah,
Okay.
it's for the group. My company's a sponsor though, but yeah, it's called the Philly Tech Connect podcast. We do that once a week on Thursdays. We interview a Philly entrepreneur. Should have you on, reciprocate the generosity. Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Let's hang out more. Maybe not in the evenings when we both would rather be hanging out with our kids. Maybe we'll find some other time. But Dave, you're awesome, and thank you for being on, brother. I'll talk to you soon. All right.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, brother. See ya.